Hello, welcome to the first part of learning how to navigate the night sky. So the perfect purpose of this course is to get a generalized understanding of how to observe the night sky, stars, planets, know when they are going to appear at what times of the year, why that is, and some general basic understandings on things like, orbital motions, our place in the universe, so to speak, and how to become a good observer of the night sky and laying foundations. So let's begin. So part one is what we're going to cover today, is reading the night sky and the constellations. And we will take things 1 month at a time. And the reason why I say that is that we notice that the sky changes from season to season. But if we take it 1 month at a time, and we go through an entire year, you will, by the time a year is over, you will already know when to expect certain constellations at certain times of day, when to look for things and where. So one of the things we want to do is look at apparent distance. And one of the best tools we have is our own hand. So our hand, put out at arm's length. If you use one pinky, that is 1 degree of the sky. 3 is 5 degrees of the sky. A closed fist at arm's length is roughly 10 degrees of the sky. With your pointer finger and pinky finger extended out, it's roughly 15. And if you extend your thumb and pinky out all the way, you'll get close to 25 degrees. And that's about for a point of reference, that's about the size of the Big Dipper from the handle all the way to the end of the pot. So one of the things that you want to learn is what latitude we are at. And here in northern New Jersey, we're about 40.5. Some folks round it up to 41 degrees north latitude. And what does that mean for us? So if we take a compass and point directly north, and you go about 45 degrees up from the horizon, you will find the North Star at night. Why is that relevant? So depending on where you are on the globe, if you are at 40 degrees, once again, it's 4 degrees north latitude, so, New York City, again, Polaris will be almost halfway up, maybe a little bit less than halfway up from the horizon. However, if you were on the equator, where this observer is over here, and you were looking for Polaris, it would be on the horizon. And if you were on the North Pole, Polaris would be right overhead, and the entire sky would rotate around it. And constellations wouldn't really rise or set for the most part. So, 2 constellations kind of give us generalized pointer stars to Polaris. In the later winter months, spring, summer, early autumn, we can use the Big Dipper. 2 stars at the end of the pot generally point towards Polaris. But once it gets to the autumn at 40 degrees north, and especially if you have trees or buildings, Ursa Major or the Big Dipper will be pretty low on the northern horizon. You won't be able to see it. So the other constellation is Cassiopeia, and that's nice and high and visible in the fall. And the center of Cassiopeia will generally point to Polaris as well. So you have two types of pointers to show where Polaris is. And if you notice in these diagrams over here, you can see that these stars, these constellations, they rotate around Polaris. There's a name for that. They're called circumpolar stars, which means they neither rise or set. So let's get into our seasonal constellations. But first, we want to know why we see certain stars at certain times of year. So this is an overly generalized model of the Earth orbiting the sun, not to scale at all. But you can see two examples here with a human standing roughly at 40 degrees north. Right now we're near the winter solstice in December, and basically the rays of the sun are very indirect. And conversely, in the summer, the rays of the sun are pointing much more directly to 40 degrees north. And that's the general idea that most people get with the seasons. But take a closer look. If you look at the side of the Earth that's lit by the sun, over here by the summer solstice, everything to the right of Earth is in daylight. So the sun is illuminating the sky. We can't see any constellations. However, on the left side here, it's nighttime, and all the stars and objects out over here off the slide here are visible. Conversely, in the winter, we have the opposite sky. This sky that we were looking at in the summer during the daytime is now in the nighttime sky. And the stars that were visible during the summer are now not visible because of daylight. Same holds true with the equinoxes. With the autumnal equinox, everything if you extend that image out behind you, all the stars behind you would be visible during that time. And in the spring, you again have the opposite scenario. So this particular diagram isn't. Don't pay attention to the Mars portion at this time, but you want to look at the Earth portion. So essentially, if you look at out in the distance here, you can see the names of the constellations that are on the ecliptic, and otherwise may be known as the Zodiac signs. But these particular constellations are in the background, and that's going to make during the day or night, if you're on the lower half of this diagram in March, your constellations that are to the upper part of the page are in daylight, and the ones at the bottom of the page are in nighttime. And same for the other four positions that you see here at any point in time. Anything pointing away from the sun is in nighttime. So again, this is a generalized diagram, but it gives you the idea as to what's going on here. So in December, you can see Orion during the late evening sky, Gemini, maybe Cancer and Taurus over here, right? Depending on what time of day or night it is. As the night progresses, they rise and set because the rotation of the Earth is coming into play as well. But as you get towards the equinox, you have Leo, Virgo. They are in the nighttime sky. In June, you start to see Scorpius, and July and August, you start to get Sagittarius. And then in the autumn, you start seeing stars, that are in Aquarius and Pisces, and eventually, as we get back to winter, Aries, Taurus, and Gemini again. Again, these are all in the nighttime sky, you know. So, just a little quiz for yourself here, mental note, a thought experiment here. So which ones that you see here, given the Earth-Sun relationship, are in the nighttime sky, and which ones are in the daytime sky? So once again, you can see, sunrise over here, and sunset would be on this side over here. So, and directly opposite the sun would be 12 midnight. So at 12 midnight, you would see Virgo, you'd see Leo in this particular setup here. Gemini would be getting ready to set. It's starting, it's ready to set on the horizon. The sun's about to come up. What is rising over here? Scorpius and Libra. So that is something to keep in mind when we start looking at star charts later on in the later part of this slide. So again, this just shows it again in a different manner. Again, not looking at these arrows. These arrows are pointing to the daytime stars. So we'll be looking at January 1, around 12 midnight, you'd have, Gemini over here. And, by the time you get to March, you'd have Leo would be high in the south. So another thing to keep in mind, we go further out, our perspective, not just from stars and constellations, but to what is our galactic address. So we are orbiting our Milky Way galaxy, orbiting our star, our sun, in the Orion spur of the Sagittarius arm. So the Milky Way has multiple arms. So if we were to take our position and, look at it straight down from the top down, the blue arrows here are pointing out and away from the center. And that is our wintertime sky. That is these are the stars and parts of the Milky Way that we see. So we're looking out towards the outer spiral bands and further out into our galactic neighborhood. So you'd imagine, and you also notice that these stars are thinned out a little bit over here. When you start looking towards the center of our Milky Way during this high summer, late July, early August, this very crowded here. And what does this mean? We see the Milky Way's bands the most during the summertime sky, during the summertime at night. This is the side we're facing. But what that also does is that further obscures anything outside of our galaxy, because we're looking through all of this material, gas, dust, other stars. They're blocking the way. So the wintertime sky and the springtime sky in particular is a better window for us to look at other galaxies later on. If we're, that's something to think about. And you'll see that in the star charts. So here on Earth, on the ground, two examples of what the nighttime sky, around midnight, in the middle of, summer, mid-July, late July. Here's the Milky Way's bulge right here. This is the center. We can't see anything below because of the horizon. It's just our latitude. But the Milky Way's bands would go up through the picture and behind us. Conversely, in the wintertime, you can see the constellation Orion here with the belt and the sword and his legs, right? And there's the star Betelgeuse. And you can see the much fainter, but it is there, the Milky Way spiral bands looking outside the galaxy. And so you can see that there's a lot more space here on either side, um, a lot less stars. However, the stars we do see are very bright and clear because it's usually less humid during the wintertime. Another thing to keep in mind is the motion of the Earth around the Sun and the Milky Way. Where the reason why we're looking at everything edge on, as opposed to a flat line looking at the Milky Way as a horizontal plate, the Sun is spinning on an angle about 50 or 60 degrees to the Milky Way's planes, and our Earth orbits around this, the ecliptic plane of the Sun here. So we kind of see the Milky Way, and this is again a poor example, but it explains it, all of our solar system, our planets is from our Earth, why we see the Milky Way. It looks tipped on its side and not as a flat disk from one end of the sky to the other. So, how to use a star chart. A lot of these, astronomy magazines and freestarcharts.com. You can print them out online. It's a nice, handy way to be able to navigate the sky. Remember, the zenith is directly above you, and that is the center of the page. Everything around the perimeter here that we see is the horizon. So what do we do here? So depending on what direction you're facing, let's say you're facing southwest. You want to take this part of the map and put that directly to the bottom. And so these constellations here would be what you're looking at and give you that orientation. If you want to look at due north, you would take the northern part and turn the whole star chart upside down. Now, yes, you can also download an app like Stellarium for your phone or your computer, and it will do much similar thing. But when you are trying to look at objects through the telescope and it's really dark and you're trying to look at galaxies and nebulae, you don't want a bright screen closing down the pupils in your eye. It doesn't let as much light out. So you want to study the chart with a red flashlight, as the red flashlight does not hamper your night vision nearly as much. So in that sense, paper charts are still superior. I tend to use black and white ones for observing outside because you'll see the contrast better. But inside, it's nicer to look at these colorful ones because you're surrounded by the light of your home. So this is the January night sky. So once again, I have the little guide over here in the corner of what's visible when. So we're looking, right here, and we were talking about Gemini before. Okay, so where's Gemini? So now we're at January, and you look at the times on the chart: early December, 10 p.m., late January, 7 p.m. So we know the sky is advancing. And why is that? Partially because the speed of the Earth's rotation around the sun. All of the constellations will rise 4 minutes earlier than the day previous. So if we're looking at Gemini here, here's Gemini on the star chart. So it's pretty high up in the east. It's about halfway up during this time period. On this chart here, it'd be 12 midnight. So if we waited till 12 midnight in December, 2 hours from now, Gemini would be shifted closer to the center there. So what do we see rising in the east? We see Cancer. That's new. What do we see over here in the west? We see Aquarius setting. We see Pisces getting ready to set. So Safe to say, if we were to fast forward the clock a couple of hours, these two constellations will disappear, and two new constellations. You can see Leo kind of sticking his head up over the horizon here, would be starting to appear and uh, get above the horizon, and they would become visible. Orion is also pretty much front and center at this time of the year. This is the time to observe it. So let's move 1 month. February. Interesting. Orion is now, I wouldn't say directly overhead, but as high as it's going to be in the south, right? If you look at these times, early January, 10 p.m., and then late February, nightfall. So what's happening there? A couple of things. The days are starting to get longer, and the nights are starting to get shorter. And so these times will condense around summer and become longer in the winter months. So what has happened here? Orion is towards the center. Gemini is now up at 10 p.m. in that spot we thought it would be midnight last month. Leo is above the horizon. Aquarius is below the horizon. Pisces is starting to set. And you can see Polaris here. The Big Dipper went from sitting down low to now standing on its handle. And those two pointer stars at the end of the pod of the Big Dipper are now pointed towards Polaris. So in March, we now are at the equinox. This is the spring equinox. So what are we looking at? Now we have the springtime stars. So we're in this position here. And in the nighttime, you'd have Leo, Virgo, Libra, maybe not quite just yet. But Cancer would be still quite visible depending on the time of night. So all of these constellations here will be visible. So again, in early February it's 11 o'clock, and late March again this is nightfall. So gives you a range of when this star chart is useful. What's directly overhead now? Cancer, Gemini, but that's 9 p.m., 10 p.m. at night. In February, this is at 11 o'clock at night. Virgo is coming up over the horizon. And what's setting? Taurus, right? Aries. These were, and even Orion is now in the southwest part of the sky. So these constellations are moving from our vantage point. In actuality, we're doing the moving. Advance further on into April, and now you see Taurus is setting. Virgo is quite up, high up now. Constellation Boötes, the Plow, that's now rising pretty high in the east. This particular constellation was used by farmers, and when it started to rise in the late evenings, that's when it gave them the cue to plant seeds, and this constellation will be instrumental for harvest also, and we'll see later on when we get to the other side of summer. Hercules is rising, and as we can see here, Orion is making for the western horizon at this point. And the Big Dipper is directly overhead. Conversely, in the fall, it's in the bottom over here. And now in May, the summertime sky is just beginning to take shape. You can see now that the bands of the Milky Way are completely gone from our vantage point at this point, which means this time of year is the time you want to really be looking for galaxies, things that are outside our own Milky Way. But we're not concentrating on that yet. I just figured it's a good mention. The constellation Ophiuchus is now rising, and that holds a lot of deep sky objects. Libra is rising as well. Virgo is in high in the south at this point, and Cancer is in the west, and Gemini are the twins. They are now getting ready to sink below the horizon. In June, all of our wintertime constellations are now no longer visible. And you can see over here that the inner bands of the Milky Way are now starting to come into view, and we were talking about earlier. What else do we have here? Cygnus the Swan, Aquila the Eagle, and Lyra the Harp. These three constellations we will see throughout the summer months. And they will, these bright stars here, Vega, right, Deneb, and Altair, make up the brightest stars in summer. These are called the summer triangle. It's an asterism that many astronomers use to guide their way to other constellations. Again, now setting in the west, we see Leo, and that was an early spring constellation. Virgo is still pretty high up, and you'll find a lot of galaxies in this particular part of the sky at that point. Now in July, we are in high summer. Usually the nights are not as clear because of the humidity levels during summer. That being said, when you do get a good night, there is a lot of deep sky objects. When I say deep sky objects, these are objects that are outside of our solar system. So anything outside of our solar system can be considered a deep sky object. So what's front and center here? The summer triangle is now very high in the east, almost near zenith. Sagittarius and Scorpius are with us now in the south, and these never get too high, these ecliptic constellations in the summertime. And why is that? If we remember back to that slide, we were looking at the position of the human facing the sun during the winter and summer solstice. During the summertime, you're getting the direct rays of the sun, and in the wintertime, it's very oblique, and so you're getting objects only. You're getting sunlight only on at an angle. Well, in the nighttime sky, it's the opposite. So in the summertime sky, the stars on the ecliptic and the constellations on the ecliptic are lying low. They don't, at 40 degrees north, they don't reach that high. So we have Capricornus rising in the east. Aquarius is beginning to rise just barely, coming out of the haze. And what is setting now in the west? Leo and Virgo. And again, watch this constellation Boötes. It's making its way towards the west as well. Not quite yet, but it's getting there. August, much of the sky does not change all that much. You can start to see some of these autumn constellations beginning to show up in the east in the evening sky. And you have a lot of your high summer stars, star clusters, nebulae, star-forming factories, and the Milky Way are all visible right here, right now. So for deep sky objects, it's within the Milky Way. The objects are plentiful at this point. And you can see now by August, Boötes is now high in the southwest. It's making its way towards the horizon, not quite yet, but it's starting to signal that maybe it's first harvest time. It's time to, all the seeds that were planted early, all the, your corn and your things of that nature, those are being harvested now. September, Boötes is further down towards the horizon, and that it's now high harvest season. Looking at this chart again, so now we're over to the small diagram here. Pisces, Aries, Aquarius. These are the constellations that you're going to see in the autumn sky. Maybe not as early as September, but Pisces is already rising. Capricornus is already rising, right? That's an autumn constellation. And your summer constellations are now starting to move off. Once they've passed, their height in the south, they will set quickly because they're not that high to begin with. Libra is already making for the southwest horizon. October, we are now in high autumn, so to speak. So your dimmest stars are pretty much visible during the autumn sky. You have a lot of dim stars. Capricornus and Aquarius, Pisces, they all have dim stars. You may notice Hamal in Aries. You may notice the Great Square in Pegasus, right? The bright orange star Enif over here. And you'll also notice by this point that the summer triangle has moved off and is starting to make for the western sky. But it'll still be around for at least 2 more months. As we make our way to November, our winter constellations are beginning to start to show again. Taurus is, both considered a late autumn and an early winter constellation. Auriga, the charioteer, is also rising, and essentially your summertime stars, summertime constellations are making for the western horizon. In December, once again, Orion is back on the scene. We are now facing this part of the sky once again, and our old familiar friends, Gemini, that we saw in January, are now back on the scene, and the winter triangle are now setting in the west. So, next thing I will do is offer you a small quiz when we're in person on the seasonal constellations. Essentially, you'll be given 4 star charts representative different times of the year, different seasons, and you'll need to pick out certain bright stars and constellations. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in class.